In this session, we're going to get words from the kids about what they remember about Montessori and what they think about it. I'm Tiffany Bakke from the Montessori Place, and today I have a special guest with me, my daughter. Now, my daughter attended Montessori school from 3 years old through about 9 years old. She went through the early childhood program and then attended through lower elementary, through 3rd grade. She's now in 7th grade, so I am asking her to go a bit back in time and recall, but it actually is going to be helpful because I want to see what really sticks out. So, Myra, what sticks out? What is memorable about what you remember about Montessori?
Well, I think that Montessori is a lot different than the public school in a lot of different ways. For example, in the public school, you usually sit at desks and stuff, especially during this COVID time when you're 6 feet apart. Whereas in the Montessori classroom, you can work in groups on big works with like your friends and stuff, as long as you don't goof off. When in the public school, you mostly do things on your own unless your teacher tells you to work in a group.
So to add a little bit to that, tell me about work rugs in the Montessori classroom then.
So in the Montessori classroom, since there's some big works and there's also not as many tables so there are these rugs that you can spread on the ground and you can do your work, and that also kind of allows more people to work together because there'll be more space.
So Montessori values movement in the classroom, and we offer different size tables. We have tables that fit one child. We have tables that are sometimes 2-seater tables, 4-seater tables, and then we have something called work mats. And here children can choose to work on the floor if they want to. Sometimes it's a really big work that's bigger than a table and they need a bunch of rugs to spread out. I guess my next question is, what are some skills that you feel like you gained being in a Montessori classroom that have served you well as you have transitioned out or just as you have become a young adult?
Well, I think that Montessori taught me a lot about independence. So when I started in Montessori, I was learning to do a lot of things on my own, like to make my own lunch and stuff. And now, while some people in my grade, I'm not trying to be mean or anything, but they don't know how to make their own lunches. Whereas I can make my own lunches and I can bake things, so I have my own baking business and I can cook. So I think that that's really useful. And another thing is, lots of people, when they grow up and they move out, they don't know how to do their own laundry or something. And I learned to do my own laundry so that I can do stuff like that once I get older.
So this is backing up a bit. Did you have a favorite material or a material that you remembered working with either in the early childhood classroom or the lower elementary classroom?
Well, I think I always liked the sensorial section because it was so much hands-on. It was kind of like building things. You, for example, take the red rods. The red rods are like these long rods, and you have these cards that show you what to do with them. For example, one of the things that you can do, one of the cards shows like a spiral, and each of the rods gets shorter. So then you would make the spiral, and I always thought that that was fun because I kind of like to build things.
Okay. How about the lower elementary classroom? Do you remember a favorite material, a favorite work, a favorite subject area?
I really liked the timeline of life because it was so interesting to see how far back life went and how many different animals came and went during the time between now and when the world first started.
Just one more question. In more traditional education settings, you have more worksheets and tests. How did you think that your teachers tested you or assessed you and could see your progression of learning in the Montessori classroom?
Well, in Montessori, instead of doing tests or writing these very specific essays, it's more, we'll say, freestyle. So you can so they have all these projects and things more than they do have tests. Take, for example, this thing called International Night, where you study international countries and you write down facts about them, their populations, different kinds of foods, and then you make a kind of food and you present it to parents of the other people in your class. And so that's kind of like how we have tests. And sometimes teachers in the Montessori classroom will ask you to show them a work that you're doing so that they can see if you're doing it right. And this is very different way of the public school. They'll sometimes in the Montessori classroom ask you to write essays, but instead of like in the public school, they give you a specific topic that they want you to write a specific amount of paragraphs about, and they want you to write it a specific way. In the Montessori classroom, it's more of you get to pick what you want to write about, and as long as you're doing it right, you can write it the way that you want to.
I know that this might be hard to answer because you're a kid and you don't have the experience as a parent, but why should a parent consider putting their child in a Montessori school over a more traditional school setting?
Well, I think that parents would really benefit from putting their kids in the Montessori classroom because since there's so much hands-on work, kids are learning more independence than they would learn in the public school classroom. They're also learning faster because lots of younger children learn better with their hands. As my mom likes to say, Maria Montessori says that the work of the hands is like what kids do or something. And so I think that children who are in Montessori would learn a lot faster than they would in the public school. For example, when I was in Montessori around the first years that I started, I was learning how to do multiplication and division and all that stuff. And now, when I was in 5th grade, I was learning multiplication, which I had learned very long ago. So I think that Montessori is also further ahead because of their hands-on materials than the public school itself.
So this video isn't so much to highlight Montessori is good and public school is not, because that's not our belief at all. I was a public school teacher for many years, and my children went to Montessori through 3rd grade, my boys through 4th, and then they transitioned to the public school. The whole reason we made this decision was we wanted our children to gain independence, to be self-motivated, to be able to do things confidently on their own. I, as a teacher, also saw the value of being able to freely move around and have choice in work, so that when you're working, that you're fully invested in what you're working on, and having that choice, you're able to learn more in depth about things of interest to you. And then teachers can see that learning through their observations, and it's not reliant on a quick checklist of a worksheet or a standardized test. Here, teachers are seeing that true depth of knowledge that children acquire following their interests. But there is a lot of value to traditional schools as well. I wanted my children to certainly be exposed to more diversity of student population. I also wanted my children to have more access to extracurriculars that sometimes you don't find in small private schools. So we hope that this information has been a little bit more helpful in words from kids of their experience with Montessori if you are considering it for yourself, your family, your child as well.
Bye.